All right. Now, here is the scapula. When you're looking at the scapula, this side of the scapula faces the internal aspect of your rib cage. So normally, we do not see this anterior surface of the scapula unless we completely remove your arm and shoulder blade. All right? Now, yeah, good luck. Right? Now, I tried doing some of that when I was in med school, trying to remove the act and disarticulate some of the bones. It is very difficult to completely remove that actual joint. So we tried removing the elbow joint, right? We went through so many scalpels trying to cut through some of those tendons and ligaments there. That's part of our elbow capsule. Sounds violent, I know. Eventually we got through, right? So then we can kind of mobilize it and kind of see inside the actual joint. But to try to mobilize this would be really difficult. So we don't really see this anterior portion of the shoulder blade usually. What we usually see is a posterior portion. With a posterior view right here, whenever you give somebody a massage, right? Everybody gets massages. Hopefully you guys give them as well, right? What happens is when you use your fingers, your thumb next time, I want you to go from the shoulder blade and feel for this bony landmark that kind of extends upwards. This is a ridge right here, right? Now that ridge you can palpate for. And that ridge is called the spine of the scapula, right here. The spine of the scapula is something that you can feel, even on yourself back here, right? Now, that spine is going to be what we use to kind of relate everything. So here's the spine of the scapula. Here's a depression underneath the spine. This is called the infraspinous fossa. Fossa is a depression. Anytime we use the word depression or fossa, I want you to think of a muscle resting there. So this is an infraspinous fossa, and we're going to see some very important rotator cuff muscle is going to be found here. So in a person that is alive, right, we should have muscle sitting on top of there, so you shouldn't be able to feel it. You shouldn't feel this depression, in other words. There's muscle covering it. Now the good news is if you memorize this, it also makes it easy to memorize a muscle later on. So this is an infraspinous fossa. You will find the infraspinatus muscle here, right? Kind of follows the fossa. So infraspinous fossa, inferior to the spine, infraspinous. This one is superior to the spine. So it's supraspinous fossa, right? And it's above it and superior to the spine of the scapula. Now, what I want you to do is now follow the spine of the scapula as it moves forward and gets thick and tough right here. This is called the Acromion process. That's what you feel here. What we're going to see is your clavicle is going to unite right here, and it's going to form a joint with your scapula. This joint is called the acromioclavicular joint. Again, this area is called the Acromion process. This joint, called the acromioclavicular joint, is a joint that sometimes get injured in football players. Recently, a couple years ago, Randall Cobb, all right, for the Packers back then, landed on his shoulder and damaged his AC joint. This is that AC joint, acromioclavicular joint, right here. Now we can feel this. What I want you to do is palpate your clavicle and then move back. As you palpate your clavicle and move back, you'll find this thicker piece of bone it's connected to up here. That's your acromion process right there. Right here. Now, as we look forward, you see a little notch right here. Right? This is your, right? This is your, I don't know if it's on your word list. Let me see if it's on your word list first before I write it on there. Okay, sorry. All right, I'll write it up. All right? It's called our suprascapular notch right here. So our suprascapular notch, supra mean above. And we're going to see a nerve that goes through there that allows us to move and activate a lot of your rotator cuff musculature. This suprasternal notch. A suprascapular notch. I don't know why I keep saying sternal. Suprascapular notch, right here. Right? It allows a nerve to exit and enter that area. Right? Now, when I say exit and enter, you can have nerves that are sensory that exits that area, so then you have sensation. Then you have motor regions, right? Motor neurons that enter that area as well. So when we talk about a named nerve, like a median nerve, you're going to have sensory and motor signals as part of the nerve. Now, let's go forward a little bit here, and we turn this around. As we turn this around, you're going to see that there is a nice, flat, depressed area in the front. This is called the subscapular fossa, right here. The subscapular fossa is going to be where another rotator cuff muscle will be found. And it's named after this fossa. The muscle is going to be called the subscapularis, the fossa, subscapular fossa. Right? Now, as we go upwards, you see what looks like a crooked finger over here? This is, right? This is called the coracoid process, right here. Coracoid process is important because it is the origin site for your biceps muscle as well as for your brachialis muscle. The main muscles that allows us to flex our arm, our forearm, right? They all start in this, right? They all are anchored in place in this coracoid process. So do not get coracoid and acromion mixed up, right? Coracoid is for movement of your arm and forearm. Acromion is to stabilize your shoulder joint as it makes contact with the clavicle. Now, the last really big important thing is this hole right here, this depression, right? This is going to form part of our shoulder joint. So the shoulder joint is also called the glenohumeral joint. And that's a joint between your humerus and your glenoid cavity right here, right? Notice how shallow that glenoid cavity is. You'd imagine that this cavity, right, is very shallow. It's very shallow. Why? It allows us to really have increased freedom of movement, increased range of motion. So our shoulder should have the greatest range of motion out of any joint in our body, right? It's a ball and socket joint. It should be able to have great rotation throughout. And there's always, though, a problem between movement and stability. The more mobile a joint, the less stable it inherently becomes, right? So if you want to move it, there's a chance that you can dislocate it as a result of this. So out of our large joints, the shoulder joint is the most frequently dislocated joint in our body. Now, you will dislocate your fingers. Those aren't the large joints we're mentioning it, right? So in terms of large joint, your shoulder joint is the most freely movable, and because of it, the less stable of the other joints. Now, we will also see borders. Here's a medial border. This is medial, right? This is my right scapula, and we're looking at it from the back, a posterior view of my right scapula. So this is medial border. Then you see an inferior angle over here where it kind of meets and moves upwards. Then you have a lateral border as it meets with the glenoid cavity. Up here, you see the superior border and superior angle. Now, borders and angles, right, they're really hard to actually tag because they get misinterpreted for so many other things, right? So understand where they are, but it's not one of those that I usually will tag when there's already so much other things. Questions so far? No? Good. What we're going to do then